Lisa Craddy here again with Tegan and Mac. Great to be back with you again. Today we are going to continue on our parenting tips and questions theme, and we're going to talk about tantrums, which I'm sure so many of us experience if you have young children and even older children sometimes. But I want to talk about specifically younger kids. My daughter Tegan, who's almost 2 years old, is really starting to enjoy that phase. And so I want to know what you do when a tantrum happens. We all know they're going to happen. It's just our children expressing themselves, expressing their frustrations. And there's I think probably a more positive way to react to them, and probably not such a positive way to react to them. So the ideas I've had or tried or come across are things like, well, you can just completely ignore it and not provide any energy to the tantrum. That can be effective sometimes, and just as long as you make sure your child is safe and not going to be knocking into something. The other option is to try to calm your child. I would say negative option would be to give in and to give your child whatever it is that they're wanting, what they're throwing the tantrum over. But we all know that sometimes we do, right? I mean, you're in a public place and everyone is staring at you and it's incredibly awkward, and you just do it. And then later you go and you think, oh man, did I do myself more of a disservice because I actually gave in to the tantrum? So my question to you is, and what I'd love for you to comment on the blog and get a dialogue about, is what do you do? And at home, I think it's a bit easier. We have more control. But specifically, when you're in a public place, how do you handle it? If you have a full grocery cart, do you walk out of the store? I know certain psychologists and doctors have recommended doing that. And maybe when the child is calm, going back in, then who knows where your grocery cart is. Or do you handle it in a different way? I'm really curious to hear. So let me know what you think. I will never forget. There was a time, do you remember before you had kids, when you would see a child screaming and you were, just a single girl, no responsibilities, and you looked at that parent and you thought, oh, can't they get their child under control? I know I will admit I might have said that once or twice before I had children. I laugh at that now because it is so naive, let's say. When you have kids, you know what that parent is going through, and you have a lot more empathy for them. So I remember this one time I was in a store, and it was with my older daughter actually, so it was about 6 years ago, and she threw a fit, and she was sitting in the shopping cart, and I decided to ignore it. I thought if I don't feed it with any kind of energy, it'll pass faster, right? So I'm walking through the store with my shopping cart, not paying any attention to this child who is screaming in the cart. And I know people were looking at me like I was completely insane. But it passed within a minute and a half probably, which is a long time when your child is screaming. But it did pass, and we, moved on, and I was able to continue shopping. But believe me, I got some looks. So I want to hear from you. What do you do? What works? What doesn't work? And let's figure out what the solution is. Obviously, it's going to be different for every child depending on what your kids' personalities are, but it's still worth talking about. So let's share, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And we will continue next week on parenting topics, because I think this stuff is really important to support each other and get good ideas from each other, what works for you, what doesn't. And so we will tackle a new topic next week, and that is going to be play dates, because we all have a lot of play dates to schedule, don't we? And so we're going to talk about the politics of play dates and what happens when your kids don't get along, but you're friends with the moms, or there's all kinds of stuff that goes into play dates, I'm sure you know. So let's talk about that next week and figure out the best way to handle scheduling play dates and making them go smoothly with very little drama. That's next week, so please comment on tantrums and what you do and what you don't do, and let's get a dialogue going. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.